also going to want to stay away from the juices of carrot and beet, which are vegetables. However, their juice is very high in sucrose and is basically going to have the same effect as eating a large amount of fruit if you're doing the no simple sugar diet plan that I'm talking about. Also eating both of those on their own in their whole state is okay, although if you're overdoing it, it's going to not be good for the blood sugar in this process of letting all these pathogenic bacteria and fungus and mold and yeast die off. So the question that people want answered is simply, where do we get our calories from if we're doing low sugar, low simple sugars? And the answer is not all fat, definitely not. And so I'm just going to go over the different components that you would have in your dietary lifestyle to give you the satisfaction you need, as well as not be overburdened by too much fat. And in some cases, yes, you're going to be consuming a little more fat than you would normally when you go off this again and start adding more simple sugars back in. However, if you happen to be the type of person that can't handle much fat, you can add more of the other things I'm going to talk about. So number one is fat. Yes, this is a source of calories. We can get fat, healthy fats from nuts, seeds, certain fruits like avocados and olives, cold press oils, and I'm also going to say very clean raw animal products. I use a small amount of animal products in my diet. However, I am vegetarian. I do consume eggs. I never cook them because cooked cholesterol is exactly what we don't want in our bodies. It's oxidized. It's very harmful. Whereas our bodies make raw cholesterol in and of itself, and if we happen to have our cholesterol happens to be too low, it can be beneficial to supplement with a little bit of raw cholesterol in that sense. But this is a way to get some fats as well as protein, which help balance the blood sugar quite well if you're going through this period of not eating simple sugars. The next category of nutrient that you want to focus on for calories is definitely protein. And protein is perhaps the best thing for balancing blood sugar. At the Hippocrates Health Institute, Dr. Brian Clement often talks about the Hippocrates diet being the highest protein diet on the planet. And if you look at the nutritional breakdown of all the things they eat, it's very true. Greens, so green leafy vegetables, sprouts, sea vegetables, algae are all extremely high in protein. Yes, some of the sprouts and green leafy vegetables are not as calorically dense, so you have to eat a lot of them to get that large amount of protein that's in them. However, if you're doing something like green juices, that's a fantastic way to get a large amount of sunflower greens and pea greens, which are really the highest protein sprouts that there are. And the amino acid profile of these are also the most suited to our human biology and our needs for these various amino acids. So that's pretty interesting. Our needs for amino acids aren't actually in the right combinations in animal flesh. So a lot of people say if you want to build muscle, you have to eat meat. However, the meat off an animal, that's just the muscle. Whereas when we need amino acids to build organs, to build flesh, to build skin, to build even parts of our bones have some protein in them. And the amino acids of what we need on a daily basis are actually best met in specifically the sunflower greens. So I would say if you're going to look to do this for a period of time, definitely consider sprouting sunflower sprouts. If not, a wide variety of sprouts, especially the salad sprouts that you can put on salads. And this is a great source of amino acids, and these proteins, because they're slow to break down, provide very long-term sustained energy. A great thing is also the algae, which are very high in protein. A bit of spirulina can be up to 70% protein, if it's depending on the source. Anywhere from 60 to 70% protein. Chlorella is also very high in protein, and great thing is to get these chlorella tablets and carry them around with you throughout the day. And if you're doing the no simple sugar thing and you're having trouble with it, like you have a blood sugar issue, like personally, going to Hippocrates, I had a little bit of hypoglycemia, so my blood sugar would dip, and between meals, because I was just used to snacking all the time, and I was eating raw even before going to Hippocrates, so I had blood sugar issues. I don't know, I was all raw. It's kind of crazy to think, but yeah, you have to really look at what you're doing and reconsider whether it's the optimal thing for your health. So using chlorella is a way to balance the blood sugar. You just pop a few of these in your mouth between meals and chew them, and that high protein, which is absorbed really quickly, can keep your blood sugar going at an even keel until your next meal. If you really need to, you can also consider raw protein powders, like everyone's familiar with Sun Warrior protein. That's fantastic. Really, you don't want to overkill the protein, just unless you can actually digest it. Some people have problems digesting that much protein. It really depends. If you keep it, the vast majority of it, vegetarian, or rather vegan, plant-based proteins, you're going to have less side effects of acidity in the body accumulating, and the studies have shown that animal protein is synthesized vastly differently in the body than plant-based protein. And it's hard to say exactly how relevant this is, because all these studies are done on cooked protein, whether it's from plants or animals, so it's hard to really get an accurate picture of this, but the evidence seems to show that plant-based protein doesn't have the same effects as a high animal protein type diet. So yeah, in the section of protein, you can choose to add a little bit of animal products if you're getting that from fat too. So you're, like I said, in fat, if you have a little bit of animal products, preferably just vegetarian, you're going to be hitting both of those categories, the protein and fat, and they can be very filling, very dense energy sources for energy. And perhaps the most important category that you have to really focus on and create enough of this so that you're not eating just tons of fat and protein, although some people do that, I would not recommend it. It doesn't sound healthy to me. Just trying to sustain yourself on fats and proteins, but getting tons of complex carbohydrates is another way to get calories in. So this would include cooked grains. Being 100% raw is not necessarily the ideal thing, and if you are facing something like candida overgrowth or any sort of issue needing the elimination of simple sugars, the only exception is cancer, and I'll talk about that in a sec. But if you're making these cooked grains from quinoa, millet, amaranth, even some oats, although oats are a little more acidic than the first three I mentioned, these are gluten-free, easy to digest grains that can prevent you from overdoing the fat for a source of calories. And what I was saying about cancer is that you probably want to not do any cooked food whatsoever if you're in that situation where you're working with this disease. Now, I'm definitely not a doctor, and you've seen my disclaimer at the beginning of my videos, so definitely contact someone that's knowledgeable about this if you're looking to make any changes of your diet, especially if it's pertaining to a serious chronic illness such as cancer, diabetes, or heart disease. So other complex carbohydrates that are raw that you can add in are things like sprouted legumes and sprouted grains. And there's some people that are pretty turned off by the thought of sprouted legumes. However, if you've never done them before, I wouldn't suddenly turn your back on them before at least giving them a try. And this can be very beneficial and handy if you're trying to do this no simple sugar route. Things like, I basically put it into two different categories. There's small sprouted beans, which are very easily digestible, and then the larger beans. So small sproutable beans, or legumes, would be lentils. There's a wide variety of different types of lentils that you can sprout for 2 to 3 days, and you can add them to salads. And then there's mung beans, there's zucchini beans,